Okay, trivia question, bigbandtheory.net. The question of the day is, who did, or Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, imitate on stage during his performances? He denied this for 20 years. He finally admitted who his influence was. Who was that? Pause. After being accused of imitating to some degree Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, Steven Tyler denied that for 20 plus years. Finally, he came out and admitted, yes, that's who his influence was. Okay, trivia question. There is two iconic guitars that actually have names, many, but probably the two most talked about guitars that the guitarists actually even gave them names was Eddie Van Halen's guitar. It was red with a lot of crazy stripes running all over the place. And B.B. King's guitar, which was a hollow body jazz guitar made by Gibson. So can you name the names that those guitarists gave their guitars? Pause. Okay, we'll do Eddie Van Halen's first. I saw them in their first tour in 1978. I didn't know what I was getting into, but his guitar blew me away. Nobody like that had ever stepped on the stage before playing that way. So anyway, his guitar was called Frankenstein, simply because it was just a bunch of pieces of other guitars thrown together, and no guitar ever sounded like that, or really I should say no player. The other iconic guitar, B.B. King's guitar, he always called Lucille, and pretty much only played that guitar. Unlike Eddie Van Halen, which went on to play a lot of other guitars. In fact, the latest one, which was named after his son, Wolfgang. Okay, trivia question. The Michael Jackson album that had the song Beat It had two amazing guitarists playing on that song. One which I'll only call rhythm guitar because he didn't play the lead, but the riffs and the guitar work. And then the second guitarist who played that lead, who was just happened to be at the studio and they brought him in. He never got paid anything. He played that lead in one time and it's iconic. Who were those two guitarists? Pause. Well, it turns out Steve Lukather from Toto did so much work. In fact, in the 80s, he played on so many albums. In the 70s, it was Larry Carlton. Those would be the two most guitar iconic studio musicians, I think, of all time. So Steve Lukather played the guitar work in Beat It. But then Eddie Van Halen was walking by one day in the studio. They yanked him in one take. He played that amazing lead in Beat It. And even when I first heard that song, I just knew it was in the wrong scale. It was a disaster. I couldn't stand it. And then after 3 times, I started liking it. After 6 times, I realized it's brilliant and beyond the normal imagination. So way to go, Eddie Van Halen and Steve Lukather. Okay, trivia question. A song, Blinded by the Light, by Manfred Mann's Earth Band. Might be their one-hit wonder. I don't know if they have other songs. It's still played today. It's a great song, but it's not well known who was the actual writer of that song, a very famous musician, and who wrote Blinded by the Light that Manfred Mann's Earth Band covered. Pause. Okay, the answer is the boss. Bruce Springsteen actually wrote Blinded by the Light. He recorded it, and it was not really that outstanding. Somehow, Manfred Mann turned that into a great song, and we still need to give credit to Bruce Springsteen for writing such a great song. Okay. Trivia question. This is bigbandtheory.net, and I'm going to ask you a question about George Harrison. So after he left the Beatles, he had a huge hit song, and all the hit songs he had after the Beatles, this was probably his biggest. And he got successfully sued for copying this song. What was that song that he recorded and thought he wrote, and what was the name of the song he copied? And by the way, I fully believe it was accidental, because we've all heard songs, the melody stuck in our mind, and only to find out we really didn't write that song. It's like being the second person to invent something. I don't think it really counts. But you thought of it, but somebody else thought of it earlier. Sort of that thing. Pause. Okay, the song was My Sweet Lord. Huge hit song. And years after the hit song, he was successfully sued. There was a song called He's So Fine. And if you look up He's So Fine, which was an earlier hit song, maybe 10 years earlier, I don't know the time frame, exact same melody, exact. So there was no question. A lot of these lawsuits are frivolous, like the Stairway to Heaven one. That's just a standard chord progression, and that lawsuit was thrown out. A lot of people think Led Zeppelin was successfully sued. No, it wasn't. So that's the answer. Trivia question. Okay, so the three nicknames that these iconic bands had, which was the Beatles, what was their nickname? Invite is the Rolling Stones, their nickname, and then Lizzie, one of my favorite bands, so I like to throw that in everywhere. What were their nicknames? Pause. Okay, so the Beatles was nicknamed Fab Four. So whenever Ringo talked about his band, he kept calling themselves Fab Four. It caught on. That's what we call them. The Rolling Stones just got too long, so people just called them the Stones. And then finally, Thin Lizzy, pretty much years after, we just started calling them Lizzie. So those are the three nicknames for those bands. Okay, trivia question. The band Guns N' Roses really is a classic rock band that were late bloomers. And so I would really say the classic rock era is from 62 or 63, really sort of through 1985. Well, it turns out Guns N' Roses really sort of started in 1987 and went through maybe 1995. So they weren't really part of the classic rock era, although they did great classic rock, which everybody should still be doing, by the way. Anyway, so the trivia question is, who were the two artists, musicians that started Guns N' Roses, and which one left the band early before they really gained popularity? Pause. Okay, so the answer is Tracy Gunn and Axl Rose did start the band. Tracy Gunn was the guitarist and started to get bored with the band and left really before they got notoriety. And then they got Slash, and of course they just blew it up with tons of classic rock that is amazing. And I think Tracy Gunn might have made a mistake. Of course, if he stayed in the band, who knows if they would have really been iconic. And to this day, Tracy Gunn is worth $500,000 and Axl Rose is worth $200 million. So financially, big mistake, Tracy. Okay, who was the first of these two bands with similar names? There's a band named Rush. We all know the three-piece band that is a progressive rock iconic band. And then another great band that we don't hear much about, Mahogany Rush. How could these two bands have such a close and similar name? So the question is, which band was first? Pause. It turns out, before I even tell you the answer, that both were from Canada. Isn't that crazy? And both started within 1 year of apart. But Mahogany Rush, actually, Frank Marino started his band, Mahogany Rush, in 1968, and Rush started in 1969. From that, we might conclude Mahogany Rush was first, but you just never know. Trivia question. What band did Hotel California? Be careful how you answer. You have to answer perfectly. Pause. Okay, this is one I went with a bet. Every time I go out to a restaurant, Hotel California is playing. And I always bet, not real money of course, I bet you don't know who recorded this song. And every time they give me the wrong answer. And they answer, oh, I know, the Eagles. And I said, no, it's not the Eagles. And they go, what do you mean? I know it is. No, it's Eagles. 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 Not the. There's no the. The Police, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, not the Eagles. Look on their albums. It never says the. So you're wrong. Trivia question. BigBandTheory.net. Our trivia question for today was, there is a bassist slash lead singer, or lead singer bassist, however you want to phrase that there's actually two of them. And each of them played both in the band King Crimson, an iconic, one of the first progressive rock bands of all time. And then they both played in Asia, a supergroup of all time. So who were these two bassist, vocalist, lead vocalist, or if you want to say lead vocalist, bassist, that played in both Asia and King Crimson? Pause. Well, the answer is both John Wetton and Greg Lake. So Greg Lake also played in Emerson, Lake and Palmer. John Wetton in not only the band King Crimson in Asia, which Greg Lake played in, not Emerson, Lake and Palmer. John Wetton also started the band UK. One of my favorite bands, the first album with Bill Bruford from Yes on drums, Alan Holdsworth, an amazing guitarist nobody can play like, Eddie Jobson, the best electric violinist and keyboard player ever. And then of course John Wetton, lead vocals and bass. Check out that album. Most people haven't heard of it. I don't know why. It's amazing. Go to YouTube. Okay. Thank you.